Hello there, this is PwnCall, and I am writing about how we can get our Heightfield map in CNC Renegade for making a map. And if you see here, I'm in Photoshop. You can use other editing programs as long as it can export in a bitmap. I like Photoshop the best. I'm not sure if GIMP would work too, but that's very similar. Anyways, here we have my picture of Oak Island, which is what my map will be based on, and this image here that has the different colored lines, that was taken from Google, and I'll post a link in the description of how you can get that of what terrain you want. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to overlay that and make a copy of it, and what you want to do is you want to make it in grayscale, so all the shades of black and white and gray. And what that will do is as you make your map, it will translate that to a terrain, a mesh, and it will make the areas that are lighter on the scale. So down there where it's the darker colors, those are lower, and as it gets up to the brighter whites, that will be a higher area of elevation on your terrain. So I have that basic outline here. What you're going to want to do is start at the outside with the darkest color, like so. And then as you fill in, you're going to change to slightly lighter hues. And over there on the left, that's kind of my scale. I have the brightest at the top and the lowest at the bottom. And you're just going to fill it in, kind of stay along those lines so you can keep the elevation close to what your image looks like. And again, I have my Google Map image. I have the opacity about 50%, so and there I just changed it down to 0 so you can see the image underneath. And as you can see, I'm just roughing it in, kind of the shapes that I want it to be. And if you leave it rough like this, what will happen is it will be a jump from one color to the next. So from the darkest to the next shade up, it will be basically a cliff, I guess you could say. And what you'll see me do here in a minute is I will put a filter on it to make it blurry, and there's actually a lot of different filters you can use. The one I used, I believe, was blur, and that will make it so it's a more even transition from one elevation to the next. So instead of it be a cliff, it will kind of be a rolling hill up towards the top in the upper lighter areas. And then you can also use the smudge tool to help that. Here we have the filter gallery. I'm kind of looking through the filters to see which one I want to use. I believe, we'll see what one it is. Yeah, that's the one I used. I believe it says spatter. But again, there's a lot of different ones you can use, and you can change the radius over there on the right and the smoothness. Yeah, see how it makes it more grainy. The grainier it is, and the blurrier it is, the more gradual your slopes will be, and the less grainy and the more distinct the color lines are, the greater the cliffs will be. They'll be steeper up. So it'll be like steep, then flat, then steep, then flat. So you're going to hit OK, and it will change it. And what I actually did was I tested this, and I realized that it was not smooth enough. So I later added a it's image, then adjustments is what you want. And then down there you'll see a lot of different blur ones, image and adjustments. So anyways, here we have it. When you're exporting it, you'll want to export as a bitmap, and I believe it is a 16-bit bitmap. And if your image is exported as the wrong bit, if it's a 32-bit, then it will not allow you to use that image. So just switch it back to a 16-bit bitmap when you export it. So anyways, here we have it in the, here we're now in Gmax, which is just like 3ds Max 8, I believe, very similar program. You can use 3ds Max 8 for Renegade as well, but for some reason I can't get it to work very well on Windows 10, so I'm just using Gmax. I'm changing my length segments so that it's not as pixelated. So the more segments you have, the more verts you have. And then We're going to move it around. And actually what you need to make sure you do is after you convert it to editable mesh, you'll go down to the modifiers and displace is what you want. And then where it says bitmap, you're going to go to images, choose your bitmap. And I believe it needs to be a 16-bit bitmap for Renegade. I believe that's what you want. Then you're going to change the strength. That's how high you want it to go up. So for example, 40 will be the highest, where it's bright white will be 40 meters or whatever units you're in. If you change that 40 to 100, it will go up to 100 meters. If you look there, those are where my dots are on my image, and as you can see, they gradually move up to the highest height. So now you can kind of see it's a rough shape of my terrain. And actually what I did was I realized this wasn't exactly how I wanted it, so I went back in and I changed my image, and I'll show you how that looks here. Here's my second image that's a lot more blurred, and as you can see it is much smoother, so it's not as much of a cliff as a jump from one height level to the next. It's more gradual, which looks a little more realistic. Now I want to delete all the other crap that I don't need, so let me change the color here so you can see it a little better. A little bit lighter color helps with that. So as you can see, it slowly ramps up to the different colors, and it's pretty good, pretty close to what the map looked like. And I obviously made some flat spots so I can put the base buildings in there. Moving it down a little bit so you can see your buildings. And then you can scale it as well so that it's the right size. One thing you do need to make sure is that your image and your plane are roughly the same dimensions. For example, if your image is a perfect square, a 5x5 square, you'll want your plane to be a perfect 5x5 square then as well. That way it doesn't distort your image. Now on the side view here, I'm selecting all the polys that are on the bottom, and actually it's a little bit easier if you do edge to select them, because sometimes it will grab the ones up, and you'll see what I mean here. This is if you use verts when you do this. It's going to grab them all, and when I delete it, it will make so it's not super smooth along the edges. And when I make the water around it, might have some holes in the terrain, and I'll zoom in here so you can see that a little bit better. So when you go down towards almost flat, you see how the holes kind of are jagged on the edges there, and they creep up a little bit. That's going to be a problem when you make your water, because you'll have to make your water up a lot higher and to hide those holes, or you'll have to move all those little verts down, which is a pain in the butt. So grab it by the edge is what I like to do, and I'll show you how that works here from the side view. So I'm grabbing all the edges, and when I delete them now, it won't delete any of the faces that are up into the terrain, so it'll be more, I guess you could say, when I make my water, it'll be more flat around the edges of the map, which is what I want. Deleted those, and deleted all the other bumps floating off in the ocean that I won't need. And now if you view it from the side here, you can see it's nice and flat, and then when you view it here, we'll zoom in a little. Now when you scroll down, you see how it's nice and flat, there's no missing edges poking up into the terrain, which is nice and what we want. Here I'm just putting a temporary water texture so we can kind of see where the water is, and make sure you name it waters, just easier to find it later. And also for the water, since I had my last plane had a lot of length and width segments, I don't need that many for the water because it's just flat plane. So just change it to 1 and 1. That will make a lot less polygons. Here now I'm going to show you how to add the buildings into your map. What I did was I selected the polygons that were underneath where the buildings are going to be, and I deleted those. And now we're going to attach the, I'm going to delete some more and move the verts around, so that we can kind of get them close to where we're going to weld them to the meshes that are outside connected to the buildings. So I'm just moving those around so they're easier to see when we're in the top view. That way they're not hidden underneath the little meshes that are on the buildings, and this makes it a lot easier to grab them later. These ones are pretty good. I want to delete that because it's kind of too far underneath, and this one too for the power plant. Then once we do that, we'll be able to weld them and attach the meshes that are on the buildings. So now I'm going to attach them. I'm going to right click on the main terrain, and then I'm going to go to attach and then click on the meshes, all the meshes that are attached to the buildings here, and that will combine them. And if you see there, it took the material from the mesh around the buildings, and I don't really want that on there, so I'm going to hit M and delete the material because we don't want that. Now here we're going to weld all the verts together, and I like to have the edge faces on, and it's actually almost easier in wireframe mode. You're going to select both the verts you want to weld, or multiple verts, and you're going to go over here on the side to where it says weld, and then you're going to change this, the top number where it says select, to a bigger number because that's the distance that they have to be between each other for it to weld. So just make that a big number. That way it will weld them no matter what. And you can either hit selected to weld them together, like I just did there, or what I like to do, which makes it a lot easier if you're doing a lot of these, is you can go to customize at the top and customize your interface, and then you find weld. You can either search by hitting W or scroll down to where it says weld, and then you can hit a hotkey over on the right. I usually just set it to W, say W and then assign. Then you can hit, actually you can just cancel this out. You don't have to save it. So hit the X, and then now every time you hit W it will weld instead of having to go over to the right and hit the select button every time. So now I'm welding all the verts together. And then here I'll show you where now there's a hole there, and once I get all these done, I'll show you how you can fill those holes with the create polygon tool. And there you see that was further than 10, so I need to make my number higher, so I moved it up to 30 so it would weld those verts together. And it always, when you weld verts, it welds them in between, halfway between the two, so it doesn't move to one of the verts, it welds right in between the two. That's where the new vert will be. So once I have all these verts welded, there will be some holes where I didn't weld any verts because the gap was too big, and I'll show you in the perspective view so you can kind of see. Now those are the holes, and it's pretty easy to fill these. You're going to right click on the mesh, probably not in wireframe, and smooth is better, perspective. And right click on the mesh, and you're going to go to create polygons, and every single vert you touch, it will create a polygon that fills in between those verts. Make sure you go counterclockwise. If you go clockwise, it will put the polygon on the opposite side, so the underside of the terrain, and that isn't really useful for what we're doing here. And yeah, that's how you add buildings to terrain, to a Heightfield map. Thanks for watching.